Welcome back. This video will explain some advanced form creation techniques. We're going to start out by going to the Forms section. We'll go to Business, and then we're going to add a new patient form here. So we'll click this button right there, and then come over and add a vestibular form. It can be called whatever it is that you'd like. So I'll just call it vestibular form for now, even though that's a bit redundant. I'll go to the vestibular form, go into layout mode. We've shown you this in another video, and titled that vestibular form there, save my change, and then finally go back to the home screen. I'm going fast because we just showed you this in another video. Don't want to take too long. And I'm going to put that vestibular form right there. So now I can actually go right to the form if desired. Let me click in here, scroll down to the bottom, and choose vestibular form, where I could preview, print, email, archive, or go to the form. Well, let's take a look at the form that we want to transfer or insert from Word. So I can see all this information here, and I can do this just a little bit at a time, as I'm going to do, as you'll see. So I'm going to copy that top section there, and then come back to HearForm, go into layout mode by hitting Edit Layout, and then I'm going to get my text tool. Notice that my margins are showing. I did that in another video. I don't have to show the margins. I can do something like that or not show the page breaks, but I want to see where my page starts and stops here on the side. I'll get my text tool instead of my arrow, my text tool, and drag a spot here for that text. Doesn't have to be just right. And then I'll paste that, Control V in this case. I'm then going to center that by aligning the text center here, and as you've seen in other videos, I can make that larger using some tools over here if desired, or keyboard shortcuts. Again, I'm going to go very quickly because we've already covered some of the basics here in another video. I'm going to insert the patient's name automatically here by pressing Control M, or going to Insert Merge Field. And in this case, I want a merge field called Name Full. So I'll scroll down, and it's hard to click a letter and go right to it because that doesn't always work. So we'll insert Name Full there, press the Tab key, and we'll insert the date of birth in the same way we did before. Insert Merge Field, scroll up to date of birth with no spaces between those words. So again, just trying to go fast to save time for you, because this is kind of a long video. So date of birth, we're almost there. Date of birth. So we'll insert that. And then finally, for the date, I'll press Tab again. I'm going to have it automatically insert today's date. And to do that, it's a little bit different. We're going to insert not the current date, which we don't really want. We want the day it's being printed. So we're gonna, it's a little confusing, but we don't want just today's date. We want a date symbol. And as you can see, when I do that, it puts some curly cues there and the word current date. So when I go back, let's save our changes by hitting Exit Layout in the upper right hand corner, save my change, and now you'll see that that's the day that I'm making the video on 5/10/20. So it's automatically going to put that information for Jennifer. The date stays the same, but whatever day you're printing it is going to be on the form itself. Okay, so let's just go back and add a little bit more text here. So we're going to edit the layout. You may change the text. This is just an example from a real HearForm customer who wanted to insert this form. And then we have some text here. Describe the initial onset of your symptoms or dizziness, vertigo, imbalance. So it's hard to create separate fields for these different lines. So instead, I'm going to actually remove those lines. If we were to print this out, then you can leave the lines, but we're going to make this interactive. So I'm going to move this down just a little bit, and I'm going to insert a box here. So let's save our change, exit, save our change. I'm going to go back and use something I created before. Go back to our confidential patient history screen, as you might recall. And I can see that my last field I used was 86 here. So I'm going to copy that, Control C, go back to Browse mode, come back to my business forms and my vestibular form. Now back in browse mode, I'm going to paste that off to the side just so you can see that. And then I can stretch that if needed, maybe a bit wider and a bit taller. You want to allow a little bit of white space. So I'm going to change this as I zoom in a little bit and scroll over. I'm going to change that to something that doesn't interfere. I'm going to give that custom 90 in case I need to use any of these other ones on that other form later that I hadn't thought of. So I'll give myself some breathing room. Custom 90 is what we'll start with. Save our change. And now we have a field that we can enter information into. And that will be unique for each patient. So the next patient, Doris, doesn't have that information. So we're making this an interactive form. And now I'm going to go back to that other form I was on before. So let's zoom out just a little bit, scroll up to the top, and go back to our business form in the upper right. So we'll go to this confidential case history. I'm going to just borrow, for example, I could do the yes, no, and let's just copy that one. So we've copied it, Control C. We'll come back to the forms here in vestibular. You can barely see that, I know. But now what I'm going to do is paste that onto the screen. And before I forget, I'm going to change that to custom 91 because that's the next field that's available. So we've changed that. And what I want to do is I want to put was the onset of these symptoms sudden, gradual, overnight, other? And you have to decide whether or not you want that to be this or this or this, but not any more than one choice. If that's the case, you'd use a radio button. If you want it to be this and this and this, then you'd use checkboxes. Well, in this case, I'm going to use checkboxes because it could be sudden and overnight, could be something there. So let's go ahead and remove that text by getting our text tool at the top. And I'm actually going to remove those. And I'll put them off here for just a little bit. And let's move this field on there. And it'll make a bit more sense in a moment. I'm going to stretch that to accommodate what I'm about to put in there. So I've already named that custom 91. I've reassigned it to that field. And now what I want to do is I'm going to borrow this information here off to the side, and I'm going to click on the field I want to change under the fourth tab. It's a radio button set, but I'm going to just say I want that to be a checkbox set. And instead of using yes, no, I'm going to have to create a brand new one because that's kind of a unique thing that's not in HearForm already. I'll hit the little pencil icon and create a new form, and I can just say, call it anything that's unique. I'll call it onset, for example. And then I'm going to basically put these stacked in order. I'm going to put a capital there, and I think you get the idea here. So I'm going to put that down, and then I'm going to I'll leave other on there, but there's another option for that as well. Let's just leave that alone so it's not too confusing. And notice as soon as I click change or save, then it automatically saves that information. Let's click off to the side and see if that looks about right. Maybe it's a pixel too high, and I don't need the field to be that tall. So I could actually, right here, I'm going to move this right there and call that custom 92. Why would I do that? Well, I'm going to change this from a checkbox field in the upper right to an edit box. And now I have an area to put what other might be. So I'm going to actually come over to the palette tool. It's white. There's no line, but I'm going to make that a solid line. But notice here, I'm just going to make it one line underneath here. If I did that right, let's see if I did the opposite of what I wanted. I think I did. So let's try that again. Looks like there's 3 lines on there, but sometimes this is backwards if I remember correctly. I want everything, I want nothing, I want just that line. There we go. So now it's underlined. Let's save our change and take a look. So now in browse mode, I can check one or more of these, and if I say other, for example, then I can just type something in like that, and that will be changed with that record. You could make that a drop-down list, but generally something that vague you'd want to leave to where they can actually just type into it, or you could type in for you. So let's continue by going back into layout mode. I'm going to delete that text. I don't need it. And over here, I'm going to save that so I don't have to type it maybe. And then once again, are your symptoms, let's borrow this, control drag. I don't need the shift key if I'm going to put it off to the side. So I don't want 92 because I use 92 to the right of that field. I'll go with 93. Again, we want it to be unique. And this is a checkbox. I'm going to change that under the fourth button here to a radio button. And I have to, again, have a brand new one. And I'll just call this symptoms. I don't know if I've already used that. And we'll find out, I guess. So there's symptoms. You really want to have a unique drop-down list name for each one of these series of choices. So I'll just go with constant and variable. Let's see how that looks. And again, it's either going to be constant or variable, not both. So let's just save our change just to take a quick look at it. And again, it's this or that as opposed to multiple choices here if desired. If you don't like multiple choices, it's easy enough. Let's just change that and show you. It will also change the look of it though. Excuse me, I shouldn't have double clicked. I meant to click it once and then come over, and I can just say that is also a radio button. And that way it would be one or the other or the other. Okay, so I'm going to hold the shift key down and check those, and now it could just be other, and then you put something in like that. So let's now look at the rest of that Word document to see what else we have to look at. Before I do, let's go back into layout mode. I'm going to put this up just a little bit here, and we may run out of room. This is a long form. It's going to be at least 2 pages. So I'm going to move all that up. And when I do that, notice that's probably good that that happened, because you'll notice, just because I moved that text up, these fields do not move up with it. So I have to, I'm holding the shift key down to select multiple fields at once. And I could do them all individually, but now I've moved those up to match there. So that's important. We'll save our change, and let's go take a look at the Word document and see where we're at. So now, do you have a history of please circle? Well, we're not able to circle in this system, but what I can do is copy all of these here. Let's see if this works. We'll find out. Minimize that. And what we're going to do is look at the last field that we had right here, and I have to double click to see that it was, I'm glad I saw that because I made a mistake. I should have made that 93. I don't know how I left that. Oh, it is 93. That's good. I'm not sure what I was looking at. So let's just go ahead and drag that down here and make this 94, and see how it jumped to 95. You want to be careful that you select the right one. That will happen to you sometimes. Do you have a history of, and let's extend that out, and we're probably going to have to make it even bigger, but I don't want it to be radio buttons in this case. I want it to be over here checkboxes. And what do we want this to be? I'm going to click the pencil and create a new one. I think I already have something in there called history, so I'm going to call this something called vestibular history. It doesn't really matter, again, as long as it's unique. And let's see, good, I could paste that in there. Let's stretch the window by grabbing the bottom corner. And as I look here, I'm going to look back at my Word document and try to get this right. So I have to put in, it's important to put in a return after each. I'm going to use the, remove the space, I should say. And let's just make sure that there's nothing there, as you can see what I'm doing. So I'll pause that for just a minute while I finish. While the system was paused, I went ahead and put the rest of those in there. I did not put them in alphabetical order, which is often very helpful, but because the form was already made out a certain way, I left it that way. I'm going to click OK, and watch what happens on the left lower area. When I click OK, then I can see, okay, there's all those different choices. I can add more as well. And if you want some in a different position, you can, of course, move this like that. And as you can see, that might be good right there, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, and 2. and that gives us the most room. So when I click off to the side and save my change, then this form is starting to shape up. Let's preview it here. So again, it's an editable list. So if I'm in browse mode, I can click one or the other, and this would be a good idea in this particular case. So I can check multiple items there. There's not an other, but otherwise I could put that as well. So let's go back and take a look at the rest of the form here. And so we'll just copy this section here, and then we'll come back for the rest. So we're going to have a lot of yes, no's in just a moment. And when I go back into layout mode, I just want to explain that I could continue to use this text block here. But in this case, let's just move that up a little bit and remove any extra spaces that are in it. And I'm going to just kind of move that up now that it'll kind of kick back to the largest that it needs. And the reason I'm doing that is I just want to keep these text blocks separate. So I'm going to press Control Shift Drag after highlighting that text block. And I've accidentally moved it too much, so let's use the text tool now that I've got a new text block. And let's see, now it inherited whatever I had before, and I don't like that. So once again, I'm going to use my text tool. Sometimes it's a little tricky and even frustrating, depending on your mouse and a few other things. So I'm going to actually just paste this right here at the end, and that way it retains the formatting that I had before. So I'm going to kind of make that sentence go across the whole page there. And now I have a text block here, and you can use all kinds of different text blocks. For example, I could have the text block be just that. Let's see if I have any extra returns or spaces after this. Sometimes, and I do. I want you to see that. That's good. So I'm going to remove that. Otherwise, I can't make that text block any smaller. And now I have another another text block that's filled up some space. But let's go back to our word form and see what we have to do next. There's a lot of yes and no's here. So I'm going to copy all of this here, but I'm not going to use those lines really. So I could use this same text block. I guess I can get away with that, or I can just start a whole new one. But let's just see what we get here. And actually, that's right. I do want to use a new one. I'll show you why. Let's make sure we don't have any extra returns in there again. Good. Use my arrow tool. It's okay if they overlap, but I just want that out of the way. Control Shift Drag. And then I'm going to move this in a little bit so I can use my yes, no fields to the left side. So that's one reason I want a new text block. And I'll paste that in there and remove all of this because I want this to be an interactive form. And we'll come back to some of these other ones here that are questions. But let's save our change. And you might recall from another video that we already had some, let's zoom out a little bit, go back to our business confidential patient history form. And I'm just going to copy one of these, doesn't matter which one. Go back to our form, vestibular, zoom in a little bit, scroll down with this scroll bar. And then I'm going to paste that, but I have to reassign that field because I don't want to use one from another form that's being used like 61 or 62, whatever that was. I just have to kind of look here and make sure that I've been paying attention. So I'm going to double click this one. That's 93. Let's see if this is 94. Yes, it is. Good. So I think I'm safe to use 95 here. Double click, and again, it could jump all over the page when you do that, so just use caution if you can. And now we have a new form 95. I'm going to move that down, Control Shift Drag, and that's going to be 96. And then I have a gap here where I have to fill in some information. So that's 96. I'm going to do the next one is going to be 98, and I may have to move things around in just a minute. I'm going to use 97 for the text to the right of that. That was 98, I think. 99 will be the word what there. And so I think I have to scroll all the way up to 100. And yes, I wish I put zeros in front of these, but we did this years ago before I was thinking straight on that, so you kind of have to move around. to find 100 or 101, etc. So we're not quite done with the text part of this, but let's just save our change, exit, and take a look at that. Now it doesn't look great. We're going to have to move some things around. Let's go back to layout mode, get our text tool. I want a little bit more of a gap here, and to do so we'll mess up our other stuff that we have there, but that's all right. So that didn't have a gap. I'm going to get my arrow tools now and move these around. I did the control key when I did the marquee. Otherwise it will, if you don't do the control, it'll highlight anything it touches. So control will just let me grab what I want, move that down a bit. And I'm still not real happy with this because that's a little too close, in my opinion, to the words an attack is about to start above. So one thing I could do, and then I'll have to adjust these on the left, is I can change the, I think it's called leading, L-E-A-D-I-N-G, but I'm going to change the height of that row to 1.2, and it gives me just a bit more room. So I like that. Again, you have to realize you're going to be adjusting things left and right here. And you have to do them all separately because they're all affected slightly different. But that's okay. You want the form to look good. So we have that. And now let's borrow this field here and drop it there. And let's see, that was 92, 93, 94, 95. I think this is 96. If I'm wrong, we'll just fix it in a minute. And yeah, I think I am wrong. Let's see. Well, let's see what this one is. That's 96. Okay, I was wrong. So let's do 97. And then this is going to be 99 right here. Scroll down. And we can make that just a bit wider. Just move it over a little bit. And that's in case you want to enter information into those fields there. Now I did notice that looks like we have a line on that, so I could remove the line, or I can just remove the line underneath it, or remove the line within the field. I think I'm going to remove the line in the field by coming over here, and let's see if I can find it. Have to scroll up, and I'll just say line none. There we go. So now I have this, but it is solid, so if you have it on top of this other line, watch what happens. It kind of whites it out. So what I'm going to do to both of these, holding the shift key down to select them at the same time, I'm going to make those none so that they're kind of transparent or clear. And you just find that happy spot there for, let's make it a bit wider just so it looks about right. We're not trying to be perfectionists here, but just get it close for our purposes. You want to make it look nice for your own purposes. Okay, so now we have an interactive form. We're just kind of, again, getting started, but I can choose all kinds of things, yes, no, and put in anything here. I can describe that, and this would be, I'm just typing in some numbers here, but as you can see, these are all unique for themselves, and when I print out the form, then this is how it's going to look, and we're just part of the way done, but I think you're getting the idea. Well, let's finish out this page, and to do that I'm going to scroll down just a little bit, and I think I have a little bit too much space here. Don't know if I can get away with this, but I've got some extra stuff I really need to put on that. So let's see if I can get away with that. I'm going to move that up. Looks a little bit crowded, but sometimes you have to compromise and live with that. I'm not saying we have to in this case, but I want to. So let's go back to our Word document and see why I'm trying to squeeze things up. So do you have any experience, do you experience any of the following here? So let's go ahead and add that first. And I'm going to use this same text block, I believe, but give it some space here. And then come back here. Back on the Word document itself, I'm going to copy this right here, and we're going to get rid of those lines in just a moment. So let's go ahead and paste those in, and again we'll remove these lines, and we're going to put a yes or no right in front of them as we have above. But they all have to be unique yes or no fields, and I think you know how to do that. So I can even just say, well, this one kind of stands out a little bit, so I'm going to make that bold. So over here I can make it bold or different ways. So we don't have to have a space or a gap there, but I'm going to do that. And once again, let's just drag and Control Shift drag that. And I see that's 100, so I'll go with 101 and on down the line. I'm going to pause just a minute so we can get that done a little bit faster. Okay, I've added the other fields there, so that looks pretty good. Now, if we look at the Word document, there's the one that I'm trying to transfer this from. There's some extra information here that's not really going to fit on that first page, but that's okay. We have some extra room here on the second page, and it's better to make it not look crowded if possible. So we're done with this first page. Let's once again exit and save our change and take a look at how that is. That looks pretty good. So we do want some white space if necessary. And again, it's very interactive, so I can say yes, no, etc. here. And that first page is done. Let's take a look at the second page now. Well, when I paused this, I saw an apparent glitch and also a mistake that I made, but that's good because then you can learn from that mistake. Notice I'm zoomed in a little bit here, and you can see where it says describe the initial onset, and this is where I would type in the information. Well, that looks normal here, and when I preview it, let's take a look at that. It also looks normal. I have plenty of room around the words, and I also have a text block to type in. Let's exit the preview, but let me show you when I zoom out here. I don't know if this is 75 or 100%, but notice it looks really odd now, like the box is a little higher. And that's because sometimes what the screen shows, it depends on what view you're in. And even this, do you have a history of, please circle here. Now it looks good. In fact, I don't want that, do I? I want it to say check all that apply or something to that effect. But let me just write that in here before I forget. Check all that apply. And I just wanted you to see you might have to scoot things around here or there and play around with it depending on your printer, but it's generally going to print okay if you preview it and it looks okay, but it doesn't always look the same on the screen depending on how you've zoomed in and out, not in preview mode but in browse mode, just like this here. So I wanted you to be aware of that quirk, if you will. But the other problem is that when I went to choose the form, before I chose the confidential patient history form, as you may have seen that video. This is a slightly different form here, and that's a one-page form, so I did correct. I did well in choosing that. But the vestibular form, I should have paid attention, and it's not a one-page form. And so there really is a better place, and that is to use one of these forms over here because it's already set up for multiple pages, and that's because we want the header, or what's called the title header, to put your letterhead, and then subsequent pages we want to have just a little narrow strip of white so that it doesn't put your letterhead each time. So let's kind of fix that, and we'll do that by copying this here, and I'm going to put it over here instead. And so that's going to be my new vestibular form. And so again, I made a mistake, so I have to live with it by fixing this here. So business form 37, and I'm going to go to that form, which is where I have all my stuff, and click here, and I'm going to put that back to the way it used to be, and that's business form 37. I'll remove that, and I'm going to remove all of that stuff from here in just a minute. So one more time, let's go back here. Now it says vestibular form, and I'll go into layout mode, click the pencil, and I want this to be the vestibular form. I don't want two layouts to be called the same thing, because otherwise FileMaker will be confused when you ask to go to it. For example, let's go on the home screen here. Vestibular form, now when I go to it with a gray and white arrow here, it's going to the one I want it to go to, because that's the one that has multiple pages. So I don't want to redo all my effort, of course. So let's go back here, and I'm going to just use that marquee by dragging over everything, and I'll come back and clean this up later, and not when I'm not doing a video. But I'm just going to copy all that, And I can even look over here if I want it just right. I can see it's 33 pixels on the far right now, 33 pixels from the left, 146 from the top, 33, 146. So let's go back, go to this, go into layout mode, and now I can paste this. But you know, actually the distance from the top is going to be different anyway. I'll just eyeball it here because you've got this extra area here. The title header again is going to be the letterhead that prints on the first page, and the header is a white band so that we have some white space on subsequent pages. But you see here, I was able to just copy all that work that I did. I didn't want to have to redo it again. And let's save our change and take a look. And now when I preview that, it still looks pretty good. Okay, so we still have to work on the second page, and we'll do that now. Let's now go back to the Word document and take a look at what we need to do. So we left this part out, and I think I'll just start with that. And I'm going to put that in there real quick, and then I'll show you how it turns out. Okay, so I have added the fields here, but I wanted to point out something that's slightly unique about this. I've added a date field, and watch what happens when I click into the date field. It's actually a text field with a drop-down menu option. So I can actually choose a date from the drop-down menu like that, and then I can put in a text block or any text I want in this area here. So let's look behind the scenes and see what I did. This one over to the far right is an edit box, which is what we want. But both 109 and 111 are drop-down calendars. So you can choose a drop-down calendar. If desired, you can include an icon, and that will show something off to the side. Let me show you what I mean by that. So when I click into the field, you could type in, or you can choose something from the drop-down menu this way. Whichever method you prefer is fine. Right now they're different, so let's go ahead and be consistent and include an icon to show. The icon generally only shows when you're actually in the field itself. So I'm going to line that up a little bit better. And then we'll go take a look back at the Word document and continue. So right now I've copied this text right here. I've already removed the lines. I want to put a bunch of yes, no lines in there. So we'll come back into layout mode. I can borrow this right there, and I'll stretch it a little bit, and then I'll paste in the information that I had from my clipboard. And so now I have some yes, no lines here. And again, I could stretch that just a bit, but we'll see if I need to. I'm going to drag this here, and let me teach you a trick here. I'm going to Control-Shift drag it. So if you do, please list. I'm just going to put this right here, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines here, and I normally would go with 114 as the next. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to go with 118, and you'll see why. So this one, I did the last one on here. I'm not doing the one that says if yes, please list. Why would I do that? Because now if I Control-Shift drag, it's a little bit easier. See how it's right above me? I don't have to go below it. It's just, to me, it's a little bit faster. 117, this will be 116. Now it's not going to line up yet. I think it's a little bit too close, and we'll fix that in a minute. So I just Control-Shift drag. I'm not going to do them all at once because I have to have them all unique. And then once again, we'll just do this here. But see how it's easier? You've got all these choices rather than having to scroll down to the other ones. I'm going to select this here and just kind of move it up a little bit here. And I'm going to come over to the right side rather, and give this a little bit more room. It's 1.2. I think I'm going to go with 1. Oh, that's too much. I think I'll go with 1. Maybe even 1.3 would be okay. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So all I have to do is line up the first one to where I just want it. And you may have to click off to the side to see how that looks. And click right here and line that one up. And that one is a little low, I think. Oops, wrong key. Control-Z, thank goodness for that. I pressed delete instead of the arrow key. And I've lined up those. I think this will come up 1 pixel. Okay, that's fine. I've the first and the last one, but now Control drag to give that marquee. And remember, go to Arrange, distribute vertically, not horizontally in this case, and that will make those all line up. Now, I must have missed something though. Oh, I did miss something. Okay, I definitely did. So I'm going to come up here a little bit. I didn't want to put it on the bottom one. You might have been watching thinking he doesn't know what he's doing, and you would be temporarily right. So there we go. That's still a little bit too high. So do it again. Arrange, distribute vertically. Now it seems pretty good. Good. So let's save our change before I do too much more damage. We'll save that, and now that looks pretty good. So now if yes, please list. So we're going to give a different kind of field there, a text field. Let's come back and take a quick look. If yes, please list. Okay. And we'll add a text field and take a look at that. So we'll come back here. I could borrow one of these from up here. This one is not a date field. So I'll use this, and I think I'll just put it off to the side. And I have to remember, though, I messed up. So I want to see what field this is. That's 118. So I'm going to use 119. Drag this, control drag, not control shift. In this case, I don't need it to be proportionate with the other custom 112 field. And we'll just do 119. Didn't scroll enough. There we go. So I may want to make that a bit longer. And again, in this case, I may want to say I actually want a line on that. I could have put a line underneath, show you what I mean. Let's just do that. I could put a line on the field, or I could have put a line underneath on the with the text block itself. And I'm going to stretch that text block. Grab this here so it looks a little bit better. And I kind of want it lined up. I'm not very good with tabs, but there's a way to use tabs also to make that a little bit better. I think that looks pretty lined up there. And I've been using this 26 years now, and I'm still not good with tabs. Pretty bad. But that's okay, I'll get better. So we'll line that up, and now we have that. So once again, we'll exit the layout, save our change, and I've got an editable field there. Let's continue, and we'll copy this information and add the same thing. I'm going to pause this and add the information for you to save time, since you already know. I've made some changes while the video was paused, but what we're going to work on now is this grid or graph here with name and medication, etc. So in order to do that, we have to create a graph, and this top part of the graph, there's 10 total rows in this, but 9 of them will be filled in with data from the patient potentially, but this is the title role here. And so in order, let me show you how to create a graph in HearForm. And we're going to use this tool right here, which is the rectangle tool. You may have seen it in another video. Right now, the fill over to the right side is none, so I'm going to make that solid, and I'm going to leave the line solid as well. And that's so that I can easily manipulate it. If it's empty, then you can't grab the middle of it. So I'm just going to grab this and kind of make this about the right size or width. So I'm clicking on a text block above that just to see under the ruler that it's 38 pixels in the upper right here, 38 pixels from the left side of the screen. So I'm going to, now I see this is 41, so I'm just going to use the arrow keys on my keyboard to move that to 38. And slide this up a little bit. This top one will be a little bit larger than the other ones, and maybe come over to allow a little bit of space there. So that's the first area, and then I'm going to control shift drag and make that next one a bit more narrow or not as tall. Then I'm going to slide it up and match it to where it just matches just right there. So these are just individual objects, as they're called, and I'm just copying those. Now that I have two, control drag, I can control shift drag, and now I have 4 additional ones. I'll copy all 4 of those, come up just a bit, and then I just have one more to copy. I always go a little bit further so I can come up and make sure it's lined up just right. So now I have a graph, but I do not have lines in that graph. So there's a couple ways that we can do that. Let's go back and take a look at our Word document. And I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 2 wider wider ones, and then in the center some narrower ones. So let's look at how we can do that. A couple of ways. I could have just started out, let's just grab all of this here. I could have started out just making that a bit more narrow, and it doesn't have to be perfect yet, but I'll just now Control Shift drag all of that. And if I remember correctly, that one is pretty narrow. Let's go look again, because I don't know, dose times, that's about the same. Date started is a bit wider. So I'll just kind of do that. Yeah, maybe that. We have some room. Dose times per day. And then this one is a little bit wider. Again, you may have to come back and adjust those based on your needs. In fact, let's just do this. I'm going to select all of that and drag it all at once, so it'll make it kind of all a little bit wider. And that doesn't have to be perfect, but we'll just go with that here. So now I have a graph here, and let's just save our change so that we don't lose that. When I preview it on page 2, we're not done yet, but you can see that's how the graph is going to look. And what we want to do, though, is put editable fields inside of those, and it takes a little while to do that. But that allows us to, again, have a form that is actually somewhere, it'll store data, is the bottom line. So I meant to press Control V, and so this is the first one is name of medication, and let's get our text tool here. Zoom in just a little bit. And I'll cut that. Come over here. I'm not doing this perfectly, but you get the idea. We'll paste it, remove that return character, and probably be just as fast to type it. But so I'm going to just do this. I'm not going to copy and paste it because it's a little bit too much trouble. So I think that was, well, I guess we'll be consistent. The customer wanted that all caps, so we'll go with that. And I can make that the width of the cell there, and once again align that center so it looks a little bit better. I don't know what I did wrong. Let's try that again. There we go. So that's dose. If I want times per day, that's not going to fit in there, but I can do this. Let's slide that up, make it a little bit larger, and I think I can then times per day. So that works pretty well. And then for date, that's just an easy word, so I'll type that in. And then finally, oh, that's date started. I'm wrong. So let me get rid of that because I already have the one next to it. In fact, let me do this too. That's a little bit of a gap that I don't need there. So I'm going to tighten that up to make it look a little bit better. So I'm going to call that 0.9, or could have even done 0.8, but we'll just do that. Drag this over and change that to date started. And then finally we'll do purpose in this last field. I'll center it, and again you get the idea. Okay, now we have to add fields to the grid. That's a little bit trickier. So let's look at our last field here. Double click that. Sometimes it's a bit tricky to see it. So that's custom 129. So what I'm going to do is make this one custom 130. I'll borrow this one here. Actually, that has a line on it, so I don't want that. I'll borrow this one. And change that to custom 130. Make it fit. And I'm going to align that with the formatting tool. Align it. I didn't do that very well. Let's see. Align text. Oh, I did it accidentally well. It can be left justified, center justified. whatever you decide. But let me show you a trick. If you want it left justified, and you may not want it, the text bumping right up to that line, what you can do is click on this here. Accidentally moved it a little bit, sorry. So we can then come over on this panel here and either add a left border of like 8 pixels. See how it slides over? Maybe 5 is enough for you. Or you can scroll up a little bit and let's just see here. I can, under advanced graphic, I can give that a little bit of like 5 pixels this way, whichever you prefer. You generally don't need to do both. Put that back to 0. So now I have, let's see, I did both. Sorry, let me put that back to 0. There we go. And so now what I want to do is grab this one. I could go down and copy, but I want to do 131 here. Yeah, a bit of a bother when you have this much stuff, but this is more advanced form creation, so it takes longer. Now I'm going to pause so you don't have to look at all this, but I just want to show you this one I may want centered. So again, the keyboard shortcut, if you do this a lot, it really helps to learn. I'm going to center and justify it, not left justify it. But remember, I have over here this 5 pixels. I want to make that 0 if it's going to be centered. So now I have that, and I can then copy this to 132. And I'm going fast enough, maybe I don't need to pause it after all. You're already committed your whole day to this one video, so we might as well use it here. So, and then finally I'm going to do this 130 because that purpose I'm going to I want 134. I want that left justified, so I'll copy the one that is already the way I want, but it does have that extra border. So just like that, now I have those fields, but I do want to show you something that I probably should have done ahead of time. So let's shift click all of those. I'm going to group them into one thing so I can just kind of pull those back in a minute. But what I wanted to show you is I can control and drag over this whole thing here, and I'm going to group that. So it's just one big thing that I don't have to worry about moving individual pieces around accidentally. That's really helpful sometimes. And I can also lock that, so it's not going to go anywhere. Why would I do that? Because then I can come back here, and notice I had grouped those, so I'm moving them all at once. Come down 1 pixel, and I have those ready to go. So I'm going to do this now. I'm going to hold right here and go to the end, and let's just do that. Now I'm going to have to count this up real quick, and then I'll get back. Okay, I just counted it up, and I created some fields down here at the bottom. I went all the way to the end, and you'll see why in just a minute. I think I showed you before as well, but this is 170, so I'm going to Control Shift drag that just above it, and that looks about right. Well, why would I have gone to the end? Because now when I double click, I still have them grouped. That's why I'm getting this border of jagged lines there. But 170, I can go down to 165 very easily without having to scroll. Otherwise, I'd have to kind of go this way, and it just creates at least one extra click. So I'm going to go 165, and you can see again 166. I'll pause it in just a minute so you don't have to work through all of this. 167, etc. And I just think that's a little bit easier than having to scroll down like I did while it was off, what was on pause. Keep messing that up because it's so sensitive. 169, and I'll pause it and fill in the rest of this while it's paused. Okay, well I've just, as you can see, added all of those other fields there, 130, 131, etc., all the way through 174. And that way you didn't have to watch me do that because it did take a little while. But those are all filled in, and as I go back into browse mode here, you can see that these are all unique fields, etc. So, and of course that's unique not only in the graph, but it's unique for each patient. When I go to a different record, there's nothing there. So we filled in whatever this is, 9 times 5, 45 different fields on the screen, which took a while, and you have to have those fields available in your database. But once you've done that, then those are a storage area for all that information. whether the patient takes the time to type that in or you put that in for them, or they fill it out on a piece of paper and later you fill it in. At least you have a place, and again, that's the whole idea behind a database. Let's look here at the end and see what we've missed. So I've received the following. I already have some of that information on there, but this is a little bit different because the customer wanted to indicate approximate dates and duration. So that basically is saying I want 2 fields for each one of those medications there. So we'll minimize that, and we don't have those yet, so let's scroll over here and look. So I've already pasted that down here, but I'm going to have to add some new fields here. And to do that, I need to know which fields. So we see 174 was the last one, and I think I'll go ahead and borrow this here, Control-Shift-Drag, and I'll ungroup it. There's a keyboard shortcut I almost did, but it's Control-Shift-R. Good luck remembering that, right? But I'll just kind of get rid of this one and a couple more here. And so this is going to be 175. I won't make you look through or wait through all of this, but this is 175, and this will be 176. Again, scrolling down is a bit more of a bother, and we may want to put some grids around that as well. We also have to decide if those fields are a bit too wide because we only have so much information here, right? I'm going to move those over here, and we have to decide really how we're going to display this. Sometimes you do have to make compromises in your forms, but let me just make this a bit, this is a text block here. I'll add the lines over here, solid 1, make sure that first one is selected, and again, this might be, let's see, we have please indicate the date and duration of treatment. So I'm going to kind of slide this over here, line this up as best I can, about there maybe. I think I'm going to actually have to give that a little bit more room. So I'm going to come down here and let's see, I'm doing something wrong. Don't know why I'm not able to scroll down. I think I'm missing something. Can't quite tell what it is. There it is. I need a line space in this case. I'm going to go 1.3, maybe 1.2, but this is telling me the operational, it's too long. The operation is going to cause the objects to extend off the layout. Do I want to? I'll say yes, but then I'll kind of move this up because actually I should have moved this up before. I want it about where it was, and kind of maybe that right there. I do want to keep the body part a little higher so it doesn't turn into a third page in this case. So I don't know if this is going to be appropriate or not, but let's just see how it's going to work. So I'm going to move this over here because I'm going to have to do the same thing on the right side as well. And in fact, I forgot to do this, but I'm going to turn this into 2 separate text blocks. Well, what does that mean? Let's see. Nope, it's not easy. I'm going to break these into 2 while I'm on pause. Okay, well, I'm resuming here after having broken these into 2 different text blocks. But I can now make this not quite so wide, but I think I'm going to have to put kind of a title above this. So it's going to say, and just borrowed that text block there, and we're going to have 2 words, one that says date and then duration. So I just borrowed that text block, but I'm going to make it significantly smaller, like that, and another one that says duration. And that way it'll be above those fields, as you'll see. So we have those titles. Control-Shift-B makes them bold. Not sure that was the best thing to do, but maybe it's going to be all right. And now I can kind of move these up here, center that, and do the same thing here. Maybe center that. And I'm going to look here, the top of this one, as I look at the ruler, is 1390 from the top in the upper right area here. and here this is $13.91. So I'm going to come down one there, so we have that. Now I can line this up. Hopefully that will work. Now I'm not putting a drop-down calendar in there because the patient may just type in some other date and a calendar may not be appropriate for that. So we'll make that a bit smaller. And let's see, 174, 176. Really, I'm just going to then copy this over and over. I could do this as a grid and let them touch, which isn't maybe a bad idea, but I think I'm going to have to do something like that to make it work. I think I'm going to go a little more on this. I want it to be just right. So let's give that 1 point. I think I've got the room for it, so I'm going to go 1.5. And I think you can see why I'm doing that. In fact, once again, let's remember to do this. Move that down here. And then just use some math, so that would be 176, etc. I'll just fill this in for you and then come back in just a moment. Okay, so I have customized the rest of these boxes, and they're all set 175, 176, etc. all the way up through 198. So I kind of squeeze things a little tighter. Let's try this again. Looks a little too tight, but I want it to all fit on one page. So I see here that this is a little bit too tall, and just had to move that text, resize that text block so I can bring it down a bit. If I go too far, excuse me, then it's going to print a third blank page, page 3 that would be blank. So let's preview this and see how it looks now. Here's my vestibular form. I could come up a little higher probably on that, because I've got a lot of white space there, but there's the patient name and everything's on there. It's all editable, and you may have to move things around a little bit to make sure it fits just right. I actually removed the footer because it wasn't necessary, and I made the header a little bit smaller. So now I can see this and it all fits just fine. I've saved this preview as a PDF, and you can see now as I pop the PDF up here that it looks pretty good, and it all fits on 2 pages just fine. So my form is pretty much done, and I can then print that out for a patient and sit next to them if desired on an iPad, a little bit smaller so you have to zoom in, but or perhaps a laptop, and fill that form out, and it's fully editable. So as I minimize this again, you'll be able to see again these fields are all able to be clicked into and added data right into them. So that's how you create an advanced form. Hopefully that was worth your time, but I appreciate you sticking it out and learning how to use HearForm even better. Thanks for watching.